In the early days of the Big East season, have the Villanova Wildcats proven that they're a team that can make an NCAA tournament run? We'll get into that and more on today's episode of Built to Ball. Welcome to the Built to Ball podcast presented by Big East Energy. Happy to bring you my weekly podcast about all things Big East women's basketball. So let's get into it. Each week, I'm going to cover some of the top performers from the past week, highlight a player or a program that I'm keeping an eye on this week. That'll be Jasmine Bascow and the Villanova Wildcats, as I mentioned, the cold open. Plus, I'm going to give you 2 games to keep an eye on in the upcoming week. So each week I get started with sharing who the Big East named as their player of the week and their freshman of the week. For the first time all season, those players are not UConn players. So we got some newer players, different players to highlight this week. The first one, Big East player of the week from St. John's, we have Brooke Moore. Brooke this past week averaged 21.7 points, 8.3 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, including 3 straight 20-point outings, and St. John's was surged to a 3-0 week, and she was a big part of that. She is a defensive specialist, transfer from Liberty and originally from Georgia. She arrives to St. John's with some NCAA experience, having competed with Liberty in 2025. So is a player who is bringing some expertise, some level of experience to St. John's, and clearly this past week showed out. She shot 60% from the field, 57% from 3, and 80.6% at the line, 2 double-doubles. And so she's really continuing to establish herself as St. John's efficient scorer, but also a two-way player, really a defensive specialist, but 2 double-doubles, 3 straight 20-point outings. Like if she's putting up numbers like that, and that's her efficiency throughout this year, she's going to make a name for herself in the Big East and certainly stand out on that St. John's roster. For this week's Big East Freshman of the Week, we have Creighton freshman Neleigh Gessert. She broke out with 25 points against Northern Arizona, 22 of them in the second half. Hit 6 threes in 26 minutes. So definitely an impact perimeter scoring, going to fit in Creighton's system in that way. Quickly becoming a key offensive spark for Creighton. Her twin sister, Nora, is also on the team. So 2 freshmen twins that are from Omaha. They competed for back-to-back Nebraska State championships in 2024 and 25, were co-captains of their high school team, and now they are at Creighton. And I think, seeing that output from a freshman who is fitting into, Jim Flannery's system at Creighton, he's always been really great at recruiting regional talent, and this is no different. So really exciting for Neleigh Gessert. She is a player to keep an eye on, a player on the rise, and someone to watch for when you tune into Creighton's next game. The remainder of the honor roll, going through it just a little bit, we got sophomore at Butler, Lily Zeinstra, 15.5 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. She had a career high of 19 points and 6 assists. We got Sarah Strong once again on the honor roll. She's just doing it all. She had 14 points, 6 rebounds, a career high 8 assists, and 6 steals in the conference opening win over Xavier. She is just continuing to deliver with high efficiency, and she makes it look easy. She kind of puts up these stat lines in a way that really looks effortless. But when you got 14 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, and 6 steals, you're really excelling in all categories and just giving so much value to your team. The next player I'm excited about on this week's honor roll, we have Layla Jewett from Georgetown. She's a guard who transferred in from USC. She totaled 28 points and 11 assists for the week, including 5 threes and 17 points against Towson. This is a player who head coach Darnell Haney mentioned on a preseason episode to keep an eye on. Really aggressive guard, scorer from behind the perimeter. So a player to keep an eye on. Glad she's showing up on the honor roll this week. We have Skylar Forbes, junior from Marquette, 18.5 points per game. She had 24 points versus Gonzaga, including 2 blocks. So as I mentioned about Skylar Forbes before, she's a all-around player, a strong defender, can finish in the post, and is a player that's going to really be the key to Marquette's success this season. And finally, we have Bryn McCurry Jr. from Villanova. She matched her career high with 18 points, adding 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in a win over LaSalle. And that's a significant win for Villanova in their Big Five series, again, competing against other Philadelphia teams. So love that regional rivalry. And that brings me into Villanova this past week. Villanova stunned number 25 West Virginia. They beat them 81-59. So it was a bit of a one-sided affair, especially towards the later part of the game. Villanova kind of pushed ahead and created some distance between them and West Virginia. This is a West Virginia team that shorthanded beat the Duke Blue Devils. There was a interaction on the court that led to some players being ejected because some players left the bench. So West Virginia earlier this season competed with 5 players and still defeated the Duke Blue Devils, which I think honestly says more about the Blue Devils and where they're at this year than it does about West Virginia. But either way, West Virginia was on a home winning streak. I think it was 25 straight games. 21 straight games at home that they won. Villanova snapped that. So I think it's a resume building win. I mentioned earlier this year that Villanova had losses to, strong mid-major teams in Fairfield, as well as Princeton from the Ivy League. But they are a team that wants more than that. They want to compete in the NCAA tournament. They want to be a team that can make noise in the postseason, and you got to win those non-conference games that you should win. But beating a ranked opponent, this was on the road. It gives them that high value win. When you start talking about the net ratings and quad 1, quad 2, 3 or 4 wins, winning on the road is more valuable, and the manner in which they won is really impressive. Baskow and McCurry, who again was on the honor roll this year, both underclassmen. They had career best performances, and their ability to deliver in that hostile environment really signals that they are the emerging core, the new identity of this Villanova team that has been in transition a bit since Maddie Siegrist left a couple of years ago. So trying to find those anchor players, and I think Baskow and McCurry are stepping into those roles, and that they are ready for that next step to lead the team and hopefully bring them back to the NCAA tournament this year. For me, this win just shows that Villanova is finding itself in its identity again. They're a team that has a very specific way of playing on the offensive end, trying to use the whole shot clock, motion offense, lots of movement. And head coach Denise Dillon knows what she's doing. She's went to school at Villanova. She, sort of learned under Harry Peretta and is continuing to really build a strong culture there at Villanova. So shows that identity is coming back in place. And it's the type of win that makes a difference at the end of the year when the committee is deciding who's going to make it to the NCAA tournament. Having a win on the road against a ranked opponent is a valuable win, as I mentioned, and it makes a difference at the end of the year when you're deciding, is Villanova on the bubble? Can they get into the NCAA tournament, or will they return to the WBIT? Villanova's 6-2, as I mentioned. Those 2 losses came, and decent losses in the sense that those are strong teams that do compete for NCAA tournament bids in their respective conferences, in Princeton and Fairfield. But I think this certainly brings Villanova a certain level of confidence heading into the conference. They're definitely a team. They were projected in the top 4 in the Big East this year. They're a team that wants to get back to that upper echelon in the conference, and a win over West Virginia, carrying that momentum into conference play, hopefully gives them that confidence. And again, under that emerging core of talent that has to just find their footing. I think the losses that Villanova sustained earlier in the year are just early season losses that you can live with because your team's trying to gel, find its identity. But now conference play is starting, and they're seeming to click at that right moment. And if they can keep that momentum up, be sort of at the top tier of the Big East Conference, they have a good chance to make it to the NCAA tournament, in my opinion. But we will leave that to the committee come March, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played. Which brings me to my scouting report for the upcoming week. As always, every week, just kind of highlighting 2 Big East games that I'm really looking forward to, and sharing a little bit of my analysis and why I'm looking forward to it. Going back to Villanova again, they are going to DC, traveling to Georgetown to take on the Hoyas. This game is going to be streamed on Peacock, which I love to see. Big East women's basketball has, a couple of those slots on Peacock this year, just to bring the game to a different audience. Both teams have 2 losses heading into the matchup, and both teams are on 4-game win streak. So they both, had some stumbles in the early non-conference play, but are finding their way a little bit. I'm looking at this game as an opportunity for the Wildcats to maintain their momentum as the team that is probably the favorite going into this, and we expect to win. But for Georgetown, it's their chance to make a case for being in that top tier of the Big East. In speaking with Coach Haney at Big East Media Day, his take is that anything other than the top tier in the Big East is unacceptable. So they're coming for those top spots, and they're going to have to compete against and win some of these games against the top level teams in the Big East to prove that they belong there. And what better chance than to do it on your home court while you're on a 4-game win streak to make that initial statement win in the beginning of the conference play. And this game features 2 players that I listed from the honor roll, Layla Jewett and Bryn McCurry, as well as Jasmine Basco, who I've talked about a lot, who's a player who is really emerging as the star of Villanova and really one of the stars in the conference overall. The next game I'm looking forward to, this is going to be Seton Hall traveling to NC State. This one's on the ACC network, so a little less publicized or, accessible perhaps than Peacock, but I'm looking forward to this game. It's a strong non-conference test for Seton Hall. NC State scheduled real tough this year. They're still receiving votes, but they did fall outside of the top 25. But it is sort of like a top 25 matchup in the sense that Seton Hall is taking on a top 25 team, I should say. And that's a measuring stick against a nationally ranked opponent. Again, one of those wins that's important to make a case to be in the NCAA tournament. You got to beat these teams that are, higher quality wins. Again, quad 1 wins. This will be an away game. So should Seton Hall win away, that's even more value. It's a great tune-up for conference play. I think NC State is going to be a tough team to beat in this case. I know that they have had some stumbles this year, but they're really talented, led by Coach Wes Moore, and it's just a gutsy scheduling decision from Seton Hall. I love to see it, and I'm looking forward to catching that one later this week as well. So as always, just, keeping an eye on some of the players who are emerging within this conference. I think what the biggest thing I'm keeping an eye on in these first couple weeks of conference play is who's able to establish their identity early. How are these teams able to showcase their new pieces and fit within the systems that we know these Big East teams have? But each year it's different players, it's a different roster. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see just how this early conference play takes off. I'm very excited for it. Obviously, covering the Big East, I'm really excited to get into the matchups and hope to bring here weekly analysis of some of these matchups, different styles of play that the Big East features in their coaching and in their players. So you will find that here, and I will continue to bring you updates about conference play as we get into it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening to the Built to Ball podcast, part of the Big East Energy Network. Please like, subscribe, listen to all of our content. I'm T. Baker. This has been the Built to Ball podcast.